Okay, Public Safety Committee meeting, Mr. McCluskey,
Here.
Mr. Thames, Mr. Wolverton,
Here.
Mr. Wyatt, and Miss Andress. All right, so Thames is absent. You still got 4, so you got a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Can I get a motion for dispense of reading and approval of the minutes from the meeting of August 17th?
Second.
By Mr. Wyatt, second by Mrs. Andress. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And that is 4-0. Okay, we'll start with old business, 170620, request for consideration to form a joint task force of community and Homewood Police Department leadership to evaluate current policies concerning use of force and other related matters and make recommendations as needed, coming to us from Councilor Mike Higginbotham. After conversation with the mayor, I know there were several emails, and Mr. Higginbotham, I believe you were copied on them with people asking for times and dates. I know the mayor was going to be getting with the chief, I think, either tomorrow or Wednesday to set that time up to give everybody an update. So I don't know if I think we're going to carry it over until they get that confirmed, but until then, for right now, that's all I know. So if you know of anything else.
I have no additional information, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
You had more than I did.
Okay, well, we will carry this over without objection until that date gets set. 100820, request to address traffic concerns on Virginia Drive concerning school safety, coming to us from Councilor Jones.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. The issue was discussed in your last committee meeting, and I got with the chief and Mr. Hambley, and we came up with a great solution.
Okay.
And that would be to put a sign up around where you go around on the alley on Palmetto.
Yep.
That basically just says no left turn unless you're a resident of Virginia Drive. So I think that is a solution that will work for everyone. So I think we're fine. Mr. Hambley, do you have anything to add? I appreciate the creativity.
Is there a current ordinance that restricts that?
Chief said they would be able to write tickets as long as it said that, as long as they prove that they live on that street. Should we draw out an ordinance?
If there's an ordinance that says it's one way or no left turn, we don't have to modify the ordinance.
But there was already, if I'm correct, there was already a sign that said no left turn. Now we're just adding, unless you're a resident of Virginia Drive, correct?
Correct.
So there probably is an ordinance in place already, but I guess we'll double check that, Mr. Kendrick, just to make sure. Okay.
But if there's an ordinance that prohibits that, I don't think they have the discretion to say, no, we're not going to enforce it. I guess they do. I'm not sure if it'd be better to modify the ordinance to comply with whatever we direct.
Okay.
Can we carry it over one time?
Yeah, we'll carry it
Yeah.
over until we can, yeah, that's fine.
I'll put it
That's
there,
fine.
we will check on it.
Okay.
Mr. White's laughing over me like I'm not going to check on it.
I'm just happy to hear you we're hearing every night.
Randy, thank you for your help with that and the chief. Thank you very much. On to new business, 110820, request for consideration for additional street lighting and address traffic concerns in Forest Brook Drive and Delcrest, coming to us from Councilor Wolverton and Randy Hambley. Sorry I missed the finance piece of the meeting earlier where this was discussed, but if you want to give kind of an update, Andrew.
Yeah, so Randy was here too and still is, but essentially went through, he identified 7 locations. Was it 3 on Delcrest or 4 on Delcrest, 3 on Forest Brook Drive that were extremely dark that he recommended adding lights, one of which would also need a post and wiring. The others are I'm assuming have poles that can be utilized. And the expense was $999 for, but that does also include the one-time charge of putting the pole up? Okay. So it won't actually cost that entire amount every year.
Okay.
How much was the pole?
So you've got 1018 per light, $7 for the wire, and $5 for the pole. So that would be monthly. pole and $84 a year for the wire.
Okay. So Finance had moved to approve pending
Okay.
recommendation from Public Safety. It's also important to point out that we were identifying a couple other lights that some private residents have along through there that we were potentially looking at converting to the city, depending on where they're angled and whether or not the citizens are, in agreement with doing that. But, so I didn't want to close this item out is what I was trying to get at, but we were going to move to approve the 7 lights that we discussed in
Okay,
Finance.
so you want to keep it here, or?
If we can move on the 7 lights, which are going to be budgeted, correct? We basically approved that pending Public Safety right now.
Okay.
So I'd move to approve those 7 lights in Public Safety, but carry the item to continue the discussion on the 2 or 3 other locations that have private lights that people were wondering if the city could assume those.
How-
Motion to approve the 7 lights as discussed by Randy,
Okay.
so that Finance can go ahead and move forward on those. And then if we can continue to carry the item over.
How, Mr. Kendall, can we do that?
We've
Okay.
done that
I
kind of
just-
thing before on some lighting and other
Okay.
things.
All right, I want to make sure that we're following
Procedure, yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. All right, well, so we have, and I guess that's a motion, Mr. Wolverton?
Yes, motion to approve the 7 lights as discussed
All
earlier.
right, and a second for Mr. Wyatt. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed by the same sign. That passes 4-0. Thank you again, Mr. Hambley, we appreciate it. And Mr. Wolverton. New business 1208-20, request to address safety concerns at Hollywood and La Prado intersection. Counselors Andrus, Harden.
So we've had this on our agenda before, and we really didn't move on it. And we have, per our own traffic document that we took up last year, we have had 3 accidents in less than 12 months at this intersection, including Counselor Harden. Who's still here?
He's disappeared.
Oh, okay, including Counselor Harden. And so I reached out to Clark Bailey from Kimley Horn to talk about ways to address this. And I would like to move forward looking at, John and I spent a lot of time talking to people in the neighborhood, knocking on doors. And it is a concern. There are tons of kids. I know we got kids all over Homewood, but there are tons of kids going to school there. It's a dangerous intersection. And I'm ready for a stop sign there. I'm sorry, I said it. It's true. I'm ready for a stop sign there. So I did talk to Clark about that today and asked him to join us tonight. I'm ready for a 4-way stop. I'm sorry, but it's true. And John is too. I don't know where he went, but John is too.
Hollywood and La Prado.
Yes, Mr. Jones.
Mr. Bailey, you want to step up to the guillotine?
Good afternoon. My name's Clark Bailey, Kimley Horn and Associates. Yeah, so Jennifer and I talked about this earlier today. So yeah, couple things there from a professional opinion standpoint. With the safety issues that you've seen in the wrecks due to a lot of crossing vehicles. Oh my gosh, I can't do this. A stop sign would be, a solution that would help prevent that. I think the other piece of that is the pedestrian crossings. I think there are ramps on all 4 approaches. I think it was recently repaved, but we need to, make sure that the 4 crosswalks are there too. The stop sign, the 4-way stop, I think that, I've stood up here before and pointed my finger at you and said they shouldn't be used for traffic calming, i.e. just speeding and slowing down cars. In this case, I think the primary objective here is increasing the turning safety at the intersection, and so I would support it for that use. I haven't run any volume warrants or anything like that, but from a safety perspective, I think it's an acceptable measure there. I honestly don't have another, like, recommendation to implement to prevent future occurrences. If we feel this is a pattern, outside of something that would start getting into right-of-way acquisition, like a traffic circle or something. So I know that's not really on the table. So yeah, I mean, you already have another four-way stop about a block further down, and it would have some sort of discouraging of the cut-through, but I don't think it's going to have a major effect because people are already slowed down by the other one. So.
It is, Ponciana.
It's a three-way?
It's a three-way, yeah.
Yeah, 'cause
Ponciana
it's
is
on
a,
There's no difference
right.
street, cross street.
yeah. And Ponciana, like,
John.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
southbound.
I got it now.
And then, yeah.
There's two more though, right?
What's that?
Never mind.
And there's a four-way stop at
Yeah.
Malaga on the end,
Okay.
but, yeah.
Clark, hadn't there been, I mean, I know I had gotten a wreck at that intersection, and it's very difficult when it's wet and you're coming south on Prado.
Coming up the hill.
Coming up that hill and going across, waiting for
Across.
trying to get between cars. It's really bad when it's wet, because your tires will spin, and you're trying to get across, well, in a break between cars. But boy, the neighbors tell me that they've had 3 wrecks in the last 6, 8, 12 months there. And there is some number of wrecks, isn't it, to when you need.
Yeah, so, I mean, the big downside is, and this goes to the traffic calming comment, and the thing that I want to protect is the authority of a stop sign. So if you continue to use stop signs in places where there is no opposing traffic, the driver learns that it's really just there to slow them down. They start rolling through them all, and you can actually have other incidents. So in this case, I mean, there's a decent amount of side street volume, but the big thing is we need them looking for A, pedestrians, and B, other vehicles. So I would, I mean, I'm okay with it. I'm good with it. I believe it to be a viable.
I have to say, we've
option.
come full circle.
Hold on, we got
have.
Mr. Wolverton first with a comment
So I just want to,
or question.
when it was on previously, what was the outcome? I don't remember off the top of my head.
We really didn't do anything. I mean, there was
We
a tree
didn't-
that we could have taken down. There was some grading on the asphalt. Did we ever do that, Berkeley, the grading on, the problem is the ascending hill coming over La Prado, you know, if
Right.
you're headed
We
southbound.
couldn't do the grading, correct, Berkeley?
I mean, ain't being ugly, but that ain't gonna stop them from.
The problem,
Is one of the biggest issues.
Well, the issue is the speed that the cars are coming and I mean, it's not a sight distance per se. It's really the car trying to get over. The car headed southbound on La Prado trying to get over Hollywood, the speed coming from traffic on Hollywood, and then the other way, I would say is the same. I mean, the other way, typically those cars are turning left. And so that's an issue because, again, you've got the speed coming from 280 and we're trying to slow that traffic down.
Well, but
So-
if I remember correct, excuse me, Mr. Wolverton, if I remember correctly, the other problem was, and since Mr. Hambley's here, he may be able to speak to this, the other problem we had was if we put the stop sign right there, that it's going to back up traffic all the way to 31 in certain times of the day.
I do, yeah.
And if I remember correctly,
I thought I
last time
remembered
we
that as
brought this
well.
up we were cautioned to be aware that if we start backing up traffic all the way to 31, that we could have another issue brought on by it.
So, I mean, I'm all for finding a solution, right? So I don't want to debate that.
Yeah.
But I think we put in place the traffic calming policy for a reason.
That is part of this policy, though. I mean, we've hit.
Yeah, that's what they're.
Right, but do we have did we do numbers last time around? And then if so, it sounds as though the numbers indicated that we could be potentially causing backlog and other problems elsewhere. So my question to Clark would be, are there other measures within the traffic calming policy that might accomplish a similar result that will not produce the same domino effect of other issues?
So some of the other options, I mean, you're probably looking in the segment. So if it's a speeding issue, then the different the different options, you're looking more of options within the segments and not at the intersection to slow vehicles down. So that would be, you know, a vertical element in the roadway, such as a speed table, hump, lump, bump, romp, whatever.
Right.
Or, I mean, it's a fairly narrow road, so there's not a lot of narrowing opportunity there. I mean, if you want to go crazy, there's like raised intersection concepts and all sorts of things, but I have a feeling that the appetite's not really there. Yeah, so if you're trying to address, if it's less about speeding and more about the intersection operation and safety and preventing collisions, then I think a different intersection control, such as a stop sign.
And can I?
Could be. I mean, a roundabout would be very effective, but you're going to need to buy some front yards.
Yeah.
But Jan, you get them.
What about, I need to look at the map, but is there an opportunity for any opportunity for any kind of crosswalk in that area that might help accomplish both a little bit of narrowing, a little bit of
Crosswalk, you can't have a crosswalk. I mean, we already have a mid-block crosswalk that's in front of the Legion that we use during the schools. You can't, I mean, we're not gonna put a crosswalk.
So that's what I'm saying, I need to look up the map to know
There already
exactly
is
what
one.
the intersection.
There already is one.
Andrew loves the crosswalk.
I do love the
Mid-block
crosswalk.
crosswalk, there already is one. at
I like the
Legion.
median signs, I found them to be quite effective, but.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Gwaltney.
did you, go ahead.
I was just going to say, from the traffic backup perspective, I don't know, Randy, do y'all run counts out there?
Yeah, I think we did when this came up before.
We'd have to look down
I'm
at
happy
it.
to, take a look at those and see what, in terms of feet,
Okay.
what the projected queuing would be, but you can probably see it at the next stop sign, and if we had a measurement of what that existing queue is during peak time.
Okay.
We don't remove it.
Yeah.
That would tell us how much space.
Okay.
And if we're going to impact that 31 intersection.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because we don't want to move our problem and have 3 incidents a year at.
A different intersection.
And then have 10 rear-end collisions in 31.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, I do think that's a.
Yeah, and I think that was the biggest worry the last time. I mean, I know they were trying to figure out things, but I'd also, and if Mr. Hambley could take a look at it and get you the study, I'd also like to see if, because did we put signs?
We haven't done anything. We did put we put the speed sign, it's right past.
We put speed signs.
That's
okay.
right.
That's what, and I'd almost like to, I'm not saying one thing is more at fault than the other, but I don't know that it's necessarily speeding versus somebody trying to dart across
I think it's both.
when they don't necessarily need to be darting across.
I think it's both.
Because, I mean, it's a hard, but I'd like to maybe look at and see if, because, I mean, it's about time now, that how long have the flashing signs been up?
When did we put those up, Randy? About the beginning of the year?
Yeah.
So I
So,
guess
that might be a good time for us to review and see if those worked. And then we could see, okay, well, it's not necessarily the speeding, because we're not having, but it's the fact that people are trying to dart across a road when they've got two.
Yeah, that would make sense. So the stop sign downstream, it creates that like never-ending stream.
Yeah.
And the gap just there between people stopping isn't big enough to get
That's
across.
right.
So.
I'd like to know the data based on what's already been changed and be able to have something compared to possibly.
Okay, well, why don't we do this, if y'all are okay with it, is we'll get Mr. Hamley to do, I'm sorry, was there another?
I didn't have a question.
Okay, I'm sorry. I think Mr. Jones has been waving his hands for a while. Mr. Jones.
I'll yield to Mr. Waltney. No, I'll be quick.
I'll yield back.
I did want to address facts. The stop sign was not warranted. I mean, that's the bottom line. It was not warranted based on the traffic study, correct? Mr. Hamley?
It was not.
It was not warranted. So
On volume.
the amount of stop signs there are just immense, and there are too many. And so I'm not saying I'm totally against this, but I'm for looking at the entire stretch from 31 to 280 and coming up with a recommendation on which stop signs are warranted at this point. And if they're not, then take them out. let's figure out how to get traffic flowing through there, because most people already complain about having to stop so much. I can't imagine putting another stop sign and getting the feedback from residents. I don't think it would be good. So
Well, I'll
if
tell
we
you
can
this,
look at it holistically with the traffic plan, I think that would be the way we ought to approach this.
Well, I don't know who you talked to about those too many stop signs, but the neighbors there, they don't agree with you. They say there's so much
Well, you're
traffic.
1/5 of the city, so I'm
Well,
just saying.
you mean there's too many stop signs in the city?
I'm just saying, it's
I thought you meant
generally
on
when people, I
Hollywood.
mean, people are just, you're stop and go and stop and go. And there has to be a better way to have traffic flow. And I do remember that additional stop sign was gonna back up traffic. So that's the last thing we need to do. We just need to figure out
So
what
I-
is warranted, and let's look at that.
I think a good point there, I don't really know if I'm supposed to be talking, but is the holistic solution for that stretch.
Yeah.
And to ask some hard questions there, because, I mean, the situation there is people want to get from 31 to 280. I think it's hard to ignore the fact that there's another way to get there via larger roads.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I think that the stop signs were initially put in to discourage people using that route, right? Maybe it's less to slow them down, more to encourage them to go another way.
Divert, yeah.
There are more aggressive measures you can take to further discourage that. And so we could explore that in different ways too, but, yeah, I mean, yeah.
That was suggested by one of my.
Only pedestrian
constituents.
accessible though.
You would have to turn left or right at Labredo.
Okay, Mr. Gwaltney.
Is it my turn? All right.
Yes.
So I just wanted to clarify. I heard we did a study, but we didn't do a study, so the main thing I'd like to know is, did we follow the traffic calming policy that we passed to handle
Right.
these situations?
No, because this was before the traffic calming policy was put in place. This particular,
8, 12, 20 was
I
before?
believe.
The previous issue was,
The previous
right?
issue,
Correct.
yeah.
So this is a new item, though. We should be following our policy, is my only comment. Because it's going to provide a solution based on the thing that we passed as a council,
Yep.
based on the numbers that we count, that they created for us and are very, very knowledgeable about.
Yep.
So I think we should follow that process personally.
okay. So essentially what I was going to ask for, which is what would need to be done now, is a new study would need to be done.
Well, the request needs to come from, if you follow the traffic calming
Correct,
policy,
yeah,
it comes from residents
residents,
first.
sure.
Because that's
Okay, but-
anybody who comes to me with a traffic issue, I refer them to that policy and that document, and I go, fill this out. I'll even take it to the city hall for you.
But Andy, but also that report is triggered by 3 accidents in less than 12 months, which we have had. So that is not a resident coming forward with a report. That should trigger that process.
Then we may need to revisit the traffic calming policy then to have another trigger. But as it stands, it typically has to come from residents today. I'm just a big fan of following policy. So.
Oh, sure. No, I understand. Mr. Lane, did you have a question?
Doesn't he need to come to the podium and sign in?
Taking Bonita and Ventura already, taking the backside and coming back up, and going from 31 to 280, and coming back up at the last, what's the last stop sign? Now, you go right down there, it's a lot faster than going through Hollywood when it's all backed up like this. I'm just saying, so we're already redirecting traffic that way. Traffic's being redirected that way now.
Okay.
We have somebody online that would like to speak to this. Do we allow them?
Yes, please.
Yes, this is a committee meeting, yes,
Okay,
absolutely.
can you, Claudia Pearson, you can unmute.
Ms. Pearson?
Yes, thank you very much. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
I live on that corner, and we regularly see not only the accidents, but the accidents avoided, just because my husband now is working at the window that faces that intersection. And it really is a dangerous situation. I'd like to challenge the idea that we need to provide a throughway through a residential area to get to 280. And I'm assuming that they're heading south on 280 when they could just go, if they're coming from Homewood, turn left on 31 and get on 280 with one stoplight. If they're coming from 31 coming north, where could they be coming from that they would be short of Lakeshore, that they would want to use our street as a thoroughfare? This is a residential area in between Lake Shore and Highway 31 intersection and the access to 280 from Highway 31, if you just go north 1 block and 1 right, it makes no sense to maintain this as a throughway to the 280 to access. There's no other way. If they're coming from Homewood, they can also turn left. There's a left turn lane there to get on to 31 headed north 1 block. It's not like this is a real access issue to 280. And if your traffic study is looking at that, there won't be a backup on Highway 31 if they can just go straight and get on 280. People will learn that. So I'm really concerned that if you did a traffic study before, especially before you made that turn lane that goes all the way up past the school to the, what is that, the Mayfair red light? There should not be a backup when people could get in 1 lane over, go 1 more block and get on 280 without a stop sign. So that's my 2 cents there. But
Okay.
it really is a very dangerous intersection. And I'm not aware, and I'd appreciate an explanation of what the city policy that was adopted was related to whether a resident needs to make a complaint or raise the issue, because I have certainly raised the issue with my council people.
Yes, ma'am. We have a traffic calming policy that was adopted in
About a year ago.
late at the end of 2019. That instead of coming directly to the council, it's run through our engineering department, and then they run the tests and then bring it to the council, so that we were not being inundated with individual traffic calming issues, stop signs and things like that. So that's why that got implemented, and that's what and Clark, who's here, was one of the ones that helped us write that. And so I think we're all working towards the same.
This was raised a year ago.
I'm sorry, ma'am?
This was raised a year ago. And as Jennifer said, nothing was really done about it, even though it was raised before that policy was implemented.
Well,
I don't think that applies.
Yes, ma'am. Well, we looked at a couple of different options, and then, as Mr. Squire said earlier, we were looking at trying to grade the hills to where it would make it easier for the cars to be able to get over, because it's just this intersection, and it seemed to be the biggest problem was getting from one side to the other with the 2 lanes going at the same time. And again, as Mr. Bailey pointed out, when you've got stop signs at the other side, it's gapping the cars at a certain distance to where you almost can't make it all the way through. And then there was Mr. Squires, there was a tree issue as far as sight at that time. Okay. But I think we can, if we can get, if based off the traffic calming policy and the fact that 3 accidents goes ahead and puts that in place, then we need to have the engineering department with Mr. Wyatt work with Mr. Hambley to automatically get a new traffic study done, so we have the new counts. Share that with Mr. Bailey and see what we can do to, based off of the policy, come up with the right thing. And because there, again, as Mr. Jones pointed out, the first time the numbers didn't qualify for a stop sign. And so if we're going to go by the traffic calming policy, I'm assuming there has to be something we would have to take that up and say, well, even if the numbers don't state it, this is the direction we want to go.
When was that study done?
I'm sorry, ma'am?
When was that traffic study done? Because that was one of the things they said, there was a new traffic study that was going to be done, was the reason why nothing has been done in the last year, and that this intersection would be included in that new study. But then I saw that the new study was almost complete, I think.
I think she's talking about the citywide.
Oh, you're talking about the citywide traffic study.
And that's what I was going to ask.
And
It is not on there.
it is not on there? Okay. So that
Which is
particular
why I was
intersection.
saying, I don't understand why there's been such a delay to get it on there, if that's going to be another delay to getting this stop sign there. And it's not just that road is slippery when it's wet or it's steep and you can't see around. It really is people still going over 40 miles an hour by the time they get to my house, which is at that corner. They're coming through the green light, going 40 miles an hour in front of a school. with kids in the neighborhood, and this is a residential area, and if they're in such a hurry to get to Highway 280, make them turn left. Put up a sign that says Highway 280 this way, instead of letting them cut through a neighborhood, a residential neighborhood with lots of kids next to a school. It makes no sense in terms of traffic policy to me.
Yes, ma'am, we understand that, and I think that's why if we go ahead and get this new study done so that we can look at the numbers, because we did have, based off the speeding issues that we had the last time, we had the blinking signs, blinking speed signs put up, so we need to see what the results of that were, whether or not that slowed traffic down, but then also let the guys who are supposed to, based off the new traffic calming policy, take a look at this and come back to us and say, okay, based off of these new numbers, after we've seen the results from the last one, here's where we need to go. And I mean, that's what I think needs to happen, but it's the will of the committee for sure.
Well, and the ETA on that would not be very long, Claudia.
No,
I think, Claudia, I think you've got the citywide traffic study, which is taking a long time and is a thorough process versus just a spot study. And so I think that's something, Randy, we could probably.
We could have this by next week.
Yeah, by the next
so I mean,
meeting.
we could have this by next meeting, the information for us to be.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
The other thing that I would suggest is, I know that Mountain Brook's speed limit when you get off of 280, right there at Hollywood, is 20 miles an hour. And of course, the school is at the other end of Hollywood, so I'm not sure why the speed limit isn't 20 miles an hour on that entire stretch, because that would help too.
Yeah, is there a school zone
Yeah.
right there?
Yeah.
So I mean, that's, so that's already a school zone, so it's already, what is 15? 15, so it's already 15 miles per hour until,
It's 20.
it's
According
20?
to the sign, and it only starts right at the school. It does not start before the school.
Right about that, yeah, at the crosswalk.
Until where?
At the
30
crosswalk to
Until
31,
31?
yeah.
It's less
Okay,
than,
it
I mean,
should
it's
be-
really just the front yard of the school.
Yeah, you're right, Claudia.
It should be 20 the whole length of the street.
Yeah, it's, Mr. Hambley, just a quick question for you. In other areas where we have school zones, it's a lot further than just in front of the school.
Come up to the mic so they can hear you online, please.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Have him come to the
Oh,
mic.
Mr.
Have
Mr.
him
Hambley,
come
he
to the
means for
mic.
you to come up to the mic, sorry.
They haven't been able to hear them
Not
in the
me.
audience.
Sorry.
Usually, they're just in front of the school, I mean, they may expand a little further out, but they're not the whole street.
Okay. Because we have other areas around the middle school that we brought it down, Mr. Gwaltney. Correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't we bring the school zone down from the middle school
Yes.
into the
It
neighborhood?
could certainly be extended further, but again, in the school zone, is that not only during the time of the?
Correct, it is. It is only during the time of school, so.
And also, comment about this being traffic limit 280, this is also main thoroughfare connected to Mountain Road. So I think the conjecture about it being 280 traffic, stuff like that.
Sure. Okay, all right, well, I mean,
Yeah,
you're
so
on
new
the
study, and then
committee.
we come back next committee meeting and discuss, and Clark, do you mind joining us again? And, yeah. I mean, I am certainly in support of looking at the whole thing holistically. I mean, if it means we lose a stop sign at Ponciana, I'm not throwing things out there, I'm just saying, if that's a consideration. But the main issue is this, in my mind, is the folks trying to cut on La Prado either way. Is the speeding on Hollywood, and then the people trying to traverse to either side of the neighborhood on La Prado, to me. They can't get enough speed to go over the hill when traffic is coming too fast down Hollywood Boulevard.
Okay.
That's the issue. Would you agree to that, Councilor Harden?
Okay, so we have a motion from Ms. Andrus. We have a second? Second from Mr. Wyatt. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes 4-0.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, you're right, it was a carryover. It was a carryover. My apologies. So that we're waiting on, yes, correct. We are waiting on the study to be done for next meeting. 260820, request for citywide neighborhood watch program, Council to Wolverton. This was also brought up on the Finance Committee, but I know that Mr. Jones wanted us to discuss this here first before we brought any recommendations to them. So, Mr. Wolverton.
Yeah, so this has kind of come up while talking to a fair number of neighbors over the last couple months, and we're not going to move on any particular action on this tonight because it's going to take some organization, but I did want to try and gauge kind of the level of interest of other wards in trying to more formalize some sort of watch program throughout the city again. I know there's been one in the past, but to my knowledge, there's nothing really formal at this point in time. But essentially, you kind of have a neighborhood captain in certain parts of town that had a decent line of communication within the ward, and then also within the police department to kind of have somebody within the crew unit that they have, citizen unit, to just have a better line of communication, a better understanding of what's going on and maybe what specifically has happened in a certain area recently. So, I guess that's why it's in committee, was just to kind of discuss and see what others were thinking about, and whether or not that was something that there was interest in citywide.
Okay. I guess my question is, when you say more of a formal program, are you talking about running something through the city, or are you still talking about these being neighborhood run? Because I guess my question is, what if it's a neighborhood run program? Because I know we have a couple of them that are online now. What can we do as a city, and unless you have some ideas?
Sure. Yeah. No. I did talk to Chief Ross about it, and so again, it was something that was going to take a little bit more work to kind of formalize and put together. But I think it would take buy-in from both parties and making sure that we had people that were dedicated enough to that process to make it work. I think there's been plenty of people that have expressed interest in understanding about what's going on in their neighborhood during a given week or weekend, and so I think it's kind of a collaborative effort. I don't think it's purely going to be just a citizen run. I think we need some city participation. So I don't know yet if that means we have a liaison from the council that kind of interacts within the city with those teams or not. But so my motion would be just to carry it over for right now, but also to kind of ask, as I just did, what other thoughts are out there from other wards.
Okay. Mr. Jones.
Just a comment. Yeah, I agree. This is strictly from the residents who would put this through, and I would just say what we should do is just say we support anyone who wants to put together a neighborhood watch program. It needs to come from the chief, and if he wants to make it kind of an extension of the academy that he runs, the Citizens Academy, that's a great way to bring people in, to educate them. And I would just say we support them in any way and offer support that way, but I don't think there's anything from the city we can really do, except, assist them in putting them together, and Chief has worked with a lot of those already.
Okay. Thank
That's
you,
just
Mr.
my
Jones.
thought on it.
So does anybody have any knowledge of how, neighborhood watch signs and those kinds of things were put out throughout the city at one point in time? I'm assuming there was some action from the city at some point. Again, this is probably, something that I clearly don't have knowledge of how it evolved or devolved at this point, but clearly to me, there was some sort of city involvement at some point when.
I can speak to
Strictly
Ward
because
5.
of the signs?
But some of the signage, some of the people, some of the neighbors that have been around for 30, 40 years that have alluded to a more formal, watch program that used to exist.
I can speak to one in Ward 5.
I'm sorry, say that.
I can speak
Ms.
to one
Anders.
in Ward 5. Judy Truitt put one together about probably 15 years ago. It was completely neighbor-driven. I think we all chipped in and bought signs for the street signs around the neighborhood, but it was all neighbor-driven.
Okay.
Okay, so the street signs were, yeah,
Yeah.
and maybe Mr. Kendrick can.
Hold on one second, Mr.
Give signs to neighborhoods whenever they request them for neighborhood watch.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
We make them for them.
At the time, I believe they had a lieutenant that was over the neighborhood watch that was helping citizens out.
Okay.
And they would request signs from us.
Okay. And that was Mr. Hambley, really quick, talking from the Traffic Maintenance Division, that there were signs that were given to, at some point, to the neighborhood watches that had established if they requested them. Mr. Kendrick?
I believe that the police department worked with neighborhoods before in sponsoring those things.
Okay.
It's been a while, but it.
Right, and that's why I
In
brought
the
it
past,
up.
I believe the police department or the police foundation or some entity worked with neighborhoods who desired to have a neighborhood watch.
Okay, and I know that they have the citizen unit that's been a little bit less active in the last several years, but again, my conversation with Chief Ross was welcoming to the idea, but I think it's obviously more valuable if it's universal around the city.
Well, I think
in terms of buy-in and whether
Sure.
or not, I guess it's a plug to ask, your constituents as well, what are your thoughts on trying to kind of revitalize a neighborhood watch program?
Okay. Well, did anybody else have any, sorry, I have to look around to make sure. Well, if we don't have, based off the information that's been discussed tonight, there seems to be nothing that the city actually itself can do that would need to be run through the police department, through Randy's department, if signs were requested or whatnot. But for Andrew's point, if you guys can reach out to your individual wards, whether it's through your newsletters or whatever it may be, and discuss this and find out if there is interest, and then we can certainly put them in touch with Chief Ross or Captain Sutton, and then they can work with Randy to get them the proper stuff they need.
So the only
in
question
regards to
there would
setting
be,
up.
is there a formal process for signage and things like that if people are interested to try and?
Well, if there is, that would be run through the police department. It wouldn't come through here.
So does the signage come out of their budget then, essentially?
Well, it would come out of Randy's budget, yes.
Okay.
Yep. So, all right. Do you want to carry this over, or sufficiently drop it based off the information that
Can we
you
just
have?
move to table it for right now?
Okay,
Just-
well,
just
again,
so-
just know that there's nothing that the city
Sure.
can do.
I mean,
I'm just.
Sure, okay, that's fine.
I'm trying to lead you.
Yeah, I'll move to drop, that's fine.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion to drop from Mr. Wolverton, a second from Mr. Wyatt. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And that item is dropped. And with that, we're adjourned.